meeting of the North Hunterdon-Voorhees Regional High School District Board of Education. The meeting is now called to order. This meeting has been publicized in accordance with the requirements of the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975, and notification has been given to all appropriate parties. Susan, can I have a roll call?
Mr. Becker?
Present.
Mr. Gover?
Here.
Dr. Costa? Here. Dr. Kulik? Here. Ms. Lehman-Rance?
Here.
Mr. Mueller?
Here.
Mr. Peabody?
Here.
Ms. Sidor?
Here.
Mr. Strait?
Here.
Ms. Thorne?
Here.
Okay, Mr. Strauss and Mr. Jobson are not with us at this time.
Okay.
We have a quorum.
I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, for the board members, we have called this meeting together. I asked for this meeting, I requested this special meeting to address the factual and legal issues related to some recent media reports. What we're going to do actually is initially we're going to go into executive session. There's one item that we will be discussing in executive session, and it is the legal issues related to the discussion that we will then have in executive session. There's nothing else that we will discuss in executive session. Can I have a motion to move into executive session?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Discussion. I have a question. I would like Ms. List to answer some questions. Would you be able to? Ms. List?
It depends on what they are.
I have specific questions on executive session.
Well, my issue is that if there are issues that should remain within the attorney-client privilege, the privilege belongs to...
Just want to talk to you, ask questions about OPMA. New Jersey State, the School Boards Association website. I have a couple questions regarding the notices that were provided and stuff. Will any formal action be taken tonight?
I believe the notice said May, and that's going to be then part of the board.
Okay. And what is the nature of the subject to be discussed in executive session?
The same has been said, exactly the same as has been mentioned in the
Which is,
well, I don't remember the
all
exact
it says
The
attorney.
legal issues related to the recent media.
Okay.
items within the attorney-client privilege that pertain to the recent media coverage and the hearing.
At which time and under what circumstances will the executive session discussions be publicly disclosed?
Well, because they are only attorney-client privilege matters that are going to be discussed, it's only if the board wishes to waive that privilege, otherwise they will not be disclosed.
Are board members liable for any violations of the OPMA?
Well, I believe that's something that I should discuss with the board in closed session and should not be discussing in public.
I would like to know before I vote into executive session what the obligations or liabilities might be.
I don't think I should be discussing that in public.
Okay.
Any other discussion, Robert?
No?
Any other discussion from anyone? Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
We expect that the executive session will be fairly brief. Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Discussion? Okay, so we're back in public session. We're going to have a discussion with the board members, and then we will open up for public comment. I will, right now, quickly, though, let you know that because we have a significant number of public here, I want you to know that we're probably going to be in a position where we need to limit the time of each person. So if you can, as you're listening now, think about that. We won't be able to give unlimited time to every person, okay? All right, so for the board members, what I want to do is share with you some information about that's related to some recent press that you may have read and some conversation. So first I want to thank you all for joining me for this special meeting of the North Hunterdon-Voorhees Regional High School Board of Education. I did request this meeting because there are two items of particular relevance to this Board of Education that I believe have been misrepresented in the media recently and greatly misunderstood by the public. Indeed, the misconceptions have grown so far out of proportion that I thought we needed to talk in a clear and open forum in advance of our next regularly scheduled meeting. I'd like to make sure that in our discussion tonight, we collectively understand all of the facts, and at the end of our discussion, that we understand how these items relate to our collective purpose as a Board of Education. Let me begin by clarifying that the two items that I want to address relate specifically to the New Jersey State Department of Education investigation that was recently completed. This investigation was conducted by the state to assess whether or not our North Hunterdon-Voorhees Regional High School District complied with the state law and with our own anti-bullying policy when the district investigated the harassment, intimidation, and bullying, as you know we often refer to that as HIB, allegations that originated in 2012. The first of the two items that I'd like to address is a set of news accounts that were published in the Hunterdon County Democrat. The news accounts focused on some email messages sent by Dr. Beverly Hetrick. Dr. Hetrick is a New Jersey State Department of Education investigator. She sent some emails during the course of the Department of Education investigation. As you know, the investigation was initiated in response to a complaint filed with Dr. Gerald Vernatica, who is the Executive County Superintendent of Schools for Hunterdon County. The complaint was filed by Ms. Colleen Ingram. Colleen is a former member of this Board of Education. In her complaint, Ms. Ingram alleged non-compliance by the district with our own HIB policy and with the state anti-bullying law. In several emails sent while working on the investigation, Dr. Hetrick expressed some very unflattering opinions. The opinions that she expressed spoke to both the timing and the process by which documentation was provided to her by our district. She also sent some emails with opinions about some verbiage in the cover letter from Dr. Shadow that accompanied the documentation that we submitted. It is important, I think, for me to note that her opinions were predominantly, but not exclusively, expressed in reference to Dr. Shadow. My reaction to the initial reading of these emails may have been similar to your reaction when you read them. When I read the article, I was very surprised. Why? Because those email messages and the opinions expressed in them did not match anything that came to us as Board of Education members. Neither the State Department of Education nor the Hunterdon County Office of the State Department had ever shared such opinions with us. Neither Dr. Hetrick nor Dr. Vernatica had ever indicated such a negative posture to us. So naturally, I was surprised and I was chagrined to read the news accounts of the Hetrick emails. None of the emails had been seen by the North Hunterdon-Voorhees Regional High School Board of Education. None of the alleged offenses or opinions ever brought to our attention. And in addition, to be honest, I personally felt that the article's headline was very misleading. The headline read, quote, "State says its bullying inquiry was manipulated," end quote. But that is in fact not true. The quote-unquote state, end quote, never said that its investigation was, quote, manipulated, end quote, or that Dr. Shadow or any person of this district attempted in any way to manipulate or improperly influence the outcome of the investigation. Dr. Hetrick is a single individual. She is not the, quote, state, end quote, and she is not the judge of the assessment completed by the New Jersey Department of Education. In addition, I personally was surprised not only because I had never seen or heard of these emails, but because I also knew that neither Dr. Hetrick nor anyone else involved in the investigation had ever alerted any district employee or those of us as Board of Education members that there were concerns about getting documentation of any kind from the district. Ms. Ingram filed her complaint on March 20th, and Dr. Vernatica delivered the final report on May 24th. Never once during that time frame or thereafter did we receive even a hint of a concern. Not from the state, not from Dr. Hetrick, not from the county office, and there was no indication in the final report that we received that there were any concerns of this sort. So the first thing I did after I read that news article was I placed a call to Dr. Hetrick, and then I called Dr. Vernatica. I called them to ask about the emails and the news report because I wanted to find out the truth. Dr. Shadow is an employee of this board. The news reports were suggesting that the New Jersey State Department of Education had a perspective on his performance that had not been shared with us, his employer. I called Dr. Hetrick's office 3 times, and I have never, to this day, received any response. I do not know why she never responded. I did speak with Dr. Vernatica, and when I did, he told me that none of the opinions expressed by Dr. Hetrick and reported in the newspaper were shared by him or by the New Jersey State Department of Education. Dr. Vernatica told me personally, unequivocally, that he did not believe that Dr. Shadow or any other district official had been, quote, manipulative, end quote, in any way. He assured me that Dr. Shadow had shown, quote, no lack of responsiveness or transparency, end quote, at any point. He further assured me that his perspective was endorsed by the New Jersey State Department of Education. Let me share with you excerpts of a letter that Dr. Vernatica later sent to Dr. Shadow last Friday, August 9th, and on which he copied me. I have provided it to each one of you previously. I have the full letter available to the public as well this evening, but I will simply read excerpts right now. Quote, this is Dr. Vernatica, quote, on behalf of the department, I worked closely with you, and he's referring to Dr. Shadow, throughout the course of the investigation. It is my opinion and the position of the department that you fulfilled your obligations on behalf of your district during the investigations. At no point during the investigation did I have any concerns about your responsiveness or transparency. Still continuing, quotes from his letter. These emails included one person's opinions at a specific point during the course of a lengthy investigation. But ultimately, those comments were momentary impressions during the investigative process and do not reflect my official assessment of your engagement, your meaning Dr. Shadow's engagement with the department. And now I'm done quoting from his letter. All of you board members have previously received, and I hope fully reviewed, the New Jersey State Department of Education report from Dr. Vernatica. The report is entitled, quote, Investigation Findings and Determinations, Voorhees High School, end quote, and it is dated May 24th of this year. But I want to note that I'm now making the entire report available to the public. Portions of the report were made public by the media, but not the entire report. I'm going to provide the entire report with individual names redacted. In summary, guys, the report that we received from Dr. Vernatica on May 24th, 2013 indicated, as the Hunterdon Democrat did report on July 16th, that, quote from the paper, for the most part, Vernatica found that the district had acted in concert with its own policies. End quote. In addition, please note that Dr. Vernatica did not find any evidence that the district had violated the state's anti-bullying law. The report did identify 4 specific, quote, compliance items, end quote, required of us. The district was required to submit a corrective action plan. That is, a plan for completing these compliance items. We did so by way of a letter submitted to the State Department of Education on June 7th, 2013. Each of you board members has indeed received this plan previously. Again, I'm providing copies of that to you this evening. Copies of the corrective action plan are also here for the public, and we intend to post them on the district website. And the implementation of that plan is already underway. All of the items are being addressed and are what I would refer to as quote-unquote procedural items. That does not mean they're not important, but it does mean that there has been no finding brought to this board that any student was the victim of harassment, intimidation, or bullying. The New Jersey State Department of Education has endorsed the district investigation, finding that no student's rights have been violated in any way. So I think that is the essence of the facts related to the first issue. But before I leave it, perhaps I should note that I do not understand the reporting that has been done by the Hunterdon County Democrat on this issue. They have either intentionally or unintentionally fueled some pretty significant misunderstandings. The second issue that I believe needs to be addressed relates to a letter to the editor that was sent to the Hunterdon County Democrat and was attributed to me. This is a letter that was sent by Maren Smagala, and it was attributed to me.
Madam
For this
President,
item?
may I just ask, Board Counsel, has anybody been riced in this discussion? Ms. Thorne is making a statement which she stated to be personal. We're in public session. I'd like to know, has any member of the district been rice noticed?
No employee has been riced because a rice notice provides notice to an employee that they will be discussed in closed session, and that's not what we're doing.
Is it appropriate to discuss this matter in this specificity right now? We have a duty as board members to follow proper process. I'm not going to sit here and let something happen that's a gotcha that doesn't get down to the facts. Should any district staff have to have been notified with the statement you have stated to be personal? You have rights, as do every district staff member here. Should this continue as it's going on?
Again, a rice notice provides notice to an employee that a discussion is going to be taking place in closed session that may lead to adverse employment action.
And what about open session?
It gives the employee an opportunity to ask for the discussion to be held in open session.
Would you consider having Ms. Smagala waive her rights?
If the discussion is held in open session, the concept of a rice notice does not apply. That doesn't mean that an employee's performance should be discussed in open session. Every employee has the right to privacy, to have any discussion of their performance conducted in closed session. And you may not conduct, the board may not evaluate an employee's performance or discuss their performance in open session. I don't hear so far, and I have reviewed that statement, there is not an evaluative paragraph or sentence in her statement. She's describing what occurred. She's not evaluating performance. I think that's a significant distinction.
I will dispute that if it's not, but I'll wait to the end of her personal statement, and I'll provide what I need to.
As for this item, I would tell you that there's no long or complicated story. The submission of that letter and the attribution of that letter sent to me was simply a mistake. It was the result of a miscommunication and misunderstanding between Dr. Shadow, Maren, and myself. Dr. Shadow and Maren drafted a letter. I communicated some edits. I also communicated my thoughts that a letter from me might be more appropriate. They simply misunderstood that I meant that letter. I, however, did not. If I caused a misunderstanding, I apologize publicly now to Dr. Shadow and to Maren and to all of you for contributing to that resulting confusion. But let me be clear with you. There was no attempt at manipulation of me by Dr. Shadow or by Maren. There was no deception. There was nothing underhanded here. There was simply a miscommunication. The bottom line is that the letter was sent in mistake, pure and simple. In closing, I'd like to note that I believe that this administration and this district took the initial harassment, intimidation, and bullying complaints lodged by a parent against one of our employees seriously last summer. I would remind the board members that the initial incident from which the allegation originated did not take place at school, during school, or even related to a school event. The persons accused were not in our employ at that time. The allegations originated during an independent athletic event. The administration could have ignored them. Dr. Shadow arguably could have dismissed the allegations, but he did not. It was because he took the allegations seriously that Dr. Shadow referred them to the Warren County prosecutor and that he launched an investigation by our board attorney. He believed at the time that the board attorney was the appropriate individual to conduct the investigation. The board agreed with him. I do believe that these were serious allegations and that they were taken seriously. As a board, I believe we saw to it that the district and the administration did everything we believed and thought that they should do. That doesn't mean that it was easy or clear-cut. As you will recall well, the investigation and the discussions and the findings revealed phenomenal discrepancies in the perspectives of the people involved. The eyewitnesses, the reports, and the people were often in strong disagreement with one another. The issues were very emotional in nature. The debates about the alleged incidents, the perceived facts, and the historical views were very heated. Our parents and our community were passionate about both sides of the issues when they addressed us. This is not to say that the district or the administration did everything perfectly. Indeed, the State Department of Education has pointed out 4 things that our district can do better, and we have begun to put those corrections in place. We will continue as a board to discuss additional measures, and we will continue to challenge the administration to assure to the absolute maximum degree possible that we are protecting our students and our staff appropriately. Let me end by saying that the existence of Dr. Hetrick's emails or the mistaken mailing of a letter does not form our entire assessment of this administration. Our board's evaluation of the district administration is, as it has always been, an annual process that's formulated on the basis of the quality of the education that's provided to the adolescents in our community each year. It is based on the administration, in part, on the administration's success in bringing quality people to be in front of our youth, teaching them, leading them, and in managing the life cycle of their high school education. As I look at the staff of North Hunterdon-Voorhees, I personally am overwhelmingly proud of and pleased with what I see. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you guys have so that we might progress in putting this chapter behind us. I think it's time for us to focus on what's important, making good on the promise of a quality education for every youth in our district, and I'm eager to move on so that we might focus on the new school year that's about to begin. Do you guys have questions for me?
Yes. Did any district staff participate or consult in the creation with you of that statement?
No, I did that exclusively on my own, Robert.
So, going back to the letter to the editor that was published that started this whole discussion that caused the special meeting to call, did you author it solely? I think I heard you, but I'd like to restate it. Did you author the letter that was published with you as board president?
No, Robert, I did not.
Okay. So, are you here to make a statement saying that some district staff authored the letter under your name as board president and published it as a letter to the editor? You gave your board authority to a district official or staff.
No, I did not.
Well, then who published the letter?
The Hunterdon County Democrat published
Who wrote the letter?
The letter was written, as I just said, by Dr. Shadow and Maren.
Okay. And did you give them the authority?
I provided edits.
Did you give them the authority to do so?
No, I did not.
Okay. So that letter was published as you as official board president.
Robert, let me be clear. What I've said, and I'll say as many ways as I can, there was a miscommunication between Dr. Shadow, Maren, and I. We were in the middle, I certainly was in the middle of a very busy day, a lot of communications, a lot of directions, a lot of places. There was a misunderstanding. There's a difference between a letter and that letter.
I understand. And district administration knows or should have known, because every year Ms. List gives us as board a code of ethics statement that we should know that there is a duty that the board's independence and integrity is sacred. That was published by district administration. So, misunderstanding or not, it went out. It was under your name as board president. Whatever misunderstanding there is, who is accountable for it? You're not addressing that in your statement.
No, I'm not. I'm telling you that it was a mistake.
then I request that this actually doesn't need to proceed because you don't have all the facts. You can't make an accurate statement as to what happened and what ultimately the cause of it is and how it will be solved.
Robert, I do know what happened. There was a misunderstanding that occurred. Maren and Dr. Shadow believed that I said, send that. I don't believe that I did.
Madam President, you have 3 obligations as a board member. E, no private action that compromises the board. From my perspective, that letter has. G, you're to provide accurate information. You just said it wasn't. I, you're to support and protect school personnel. That's why I brought it up regarding the rights notices, because I think your statement might have magnified the problem. I think you stepped over the line with the publication of that letter and the publication of your discussion of your statement tonight, which is a personal statement, I recognize. That's an ethical issue. And I'll be glad to discuss how I find your letter that you published objectionable, because people were hurt. And the actual fact of publishing that letter,
What letter that I published?
the letter to the editor that you published under your name, regardless of who wrote it, you published it under your name. People were hurt. The integrity of this board was hurt, and you re-victimized everybody last year. You re-victimized the pedophiles victims that we gave an award to in December 2010. You re-victimized things that hadn't been investigated, but were brought to the attention of this board in last year's HIB investigation with that started this whole process, student MP. I'm not here to re-victimize students. For that, I apologize to every student out there that read this, or the parents, because it's not right that we're justifying it again. That is the objection I have to your letter as board president. So those are the 3 ethical issues I have. I also think you need to express and explain if you're conflicted, because I asked for a special meeting be called August 7, 13. And it's public record for anybody that wants it. Documents are right there to make the request. You denied it, and you stated it as unwarranted, but you forgot a sentence. I do not believe that either Dr. Shadow or Maren have done anything that warrants such a meeting or even a continuing discussion. What changed before your denial last Wednesday night to the publication of the editorial? What facts changed that caused you to pull this special meeting together?
As I told you when we spoke, what changed my opinion was the continued publicity that the item was receiving.
Okay.
And for instance, I read to you examples of what I thought were published in the paper that I believe are factually wrong. So, for instance, I read an editorial from the paper that I can't quote exactly, but it began by saying that parents in our district ought to be concerned about the bullying problem in our district. But the issue of import that I thought we were dealing with is a state investigation that said there were not any violations. So I thought that was an error. And as it continued to be an item of discussion, I felt that it was important for this board, as I said when we began this, to have a conversation in a clear and open environment about exactly what the issues were related to this.
I think we need more daylight. I would agree with you there. I have no questions right now.
Other discussion?
Thank you,
Anybody?
Bev. I appreciate your openness and your candidness in giving this board your true read of what took place in the discussion between you and Dr. Shadow and Maren. And I appreciate you clarifying to us and to the public at large a lot of the misconceptions that have been raised in the press about the various investigations and statements that have been made in the past. So thank you.
Yeah, Bev, I also applaud your statement that you made there. I think it was very important to get the facts out on the table, so to speak, so that everyone was aware of the facts, because again, it's been very puzzling to me to try to understand when I read what's written in the press and what I know that we've been communicated to by the Department of Education. There seems to be a real contradiction in what's being displayed in the press out there and what we actually know as fact. And so I applaud your efforts of setting the record straight here by providing those facts. The fact that you're making these documents available to the public, I think, so they can actually view them and read them for themselves and actually see what the true facts are behind this case, I think is going to be very helpful. The one line that perhaps you didn't mention from the letter from Dr. Vernatica that we got, I know you quoted passages from it, but one that I also thought was very interesting was he said, had I, this is Dr. Vernatica, the letter to Dr. Shadow dated August 9, he says, had I or the investigator believed there were material concerns in dealing with your response to the request for required documentation, we would have contacted your Board of Education President, and if not, addressed the Commissioner of Education for relief. So there's clearly a statement from Dr. Vernatica that if he wasn't satisfied with our response to this request for material to support the investigation, they would have been in contact with us, or the Department of Education, our Commissioner would have been in contact with us. We received no such notification. So again, it's validation that the information we were providing to the state in support of this investigation was entirely adequate and appropriate.
I support Dr. Kulik's comments. This is not the discussion about the HIV investigation with Drs. Vernatica and Hetrick. This is about the integrity of this board. This is about basically participants that were involved in the investigation on a district administration or board level basis that are now basically writing the story script as they seem to deem fit. I'm not sure that we didn't hurt people. I just said that. And that's not true. So I agree with you, Dr. Kulik. It is. We know what we need to do with Drs. Vernatica and Hetrick. We can proceed forward. We already have that. I'm sure that we're going to address it over the fall because we committed to do it. I think we're all sensitive to it. And we're going to involve the community if anything we've learned from it. That's not what this meeting is about, but I do appreciate that coming out. Let's talk about the process of how over the last week we've tried to CYA, cover our butts. Basically, we're having the same people that have gone through this, published comments that turned out to not be true under names and authority that they didn't have. How do we address that? I don't think we can do this in public session, Doctor, but I would like that addressed. That deserves rice notices.
Just listening to the statement that you provided there, I have a better appreciation for the circumstances that led to the issuance of this letter. It appears that there were discussions between yourself and Dr. Shadow and Maren regarding the creation of a letter to respond to these inaccuracies that have been out there in the press. And I think the desire to try to correct those inaccuracies was very important, I think, from a board perspective, to try to protect the reputation of the board. And from your explanation of what I heard here, it sounds like there was an understanding that a letter was going to be was appropriate to issue forward. You seem to indicate to Dr. Shadow that you supported a letter going forward, and in fact, you even offered that it would be appropriate if it would help to have the letter issued under your name. So I think you were in agreement that a letter was appropriate. Dr. Shadow understood your position there. It sounds like there was a shared miscommunication there, exactly which letter at what time it should be issued forward. But I think it's kind of a shared responsibility. I don't think one person is to blame. There was an agreement that we needed to do something to address these inaccuracies out there, get the facts out. We agreed, in principle, there was an agreement to create a letter. One side thought that this was the letter, I guess, that was going to go forward. In your perception, that wasn't the exact letter that perhaps you would have been happy with, but in the interest of trying to get the letter out there, it went forward. I don't see anything really sinister about what was being done here. I think there was an honest effort to try to correct the mistakes, the inaccuracies that were out there, and in the process of doing that, there was a miscommunication, as you described, and the letter went forward. So I have a better appreciation now for the circumstances behind that, exactly what transpired. But it's, given the climate and given the urgency to try to get things done, I guess I appreciate it a little better. Thank you for the explanation.
I'm a little confused by that because you acknowledged it. You're here tonight making a personal statement, yet the letter to the editor was as board president. Which is it?
But I'm not sure what you're asking me.
You made a statement tonight that you said was your personal statement. It's not board policy. Am I correct?
Robert, what we're referring to as a statement is my sharing information with the board as we might in any typical board conversation. The difference is that I did make a point of writing my words rather than speaking them extemporaneously.
Right.
Because one of the things I've been concerned about is the inappropriate publication of incomplete materials.
So you're making a statement.
Robert, you sound very angry.
I'm angry because you violated the trust and integrity of this board, ma'am. Yes, I am.
understand that, Robert.
You published a letter as board president, and you had no authority. That letter was never presented to this board for discussion. Yet, you are asking us tonight with your personal statement to question and then approve that.
Well, I didn't ask you to approve.
Will you be doing that, Ms. List? Will we be doing that later on tonight in action?
If that's that's the will of the board. That's what this discussion is about.
Okay, so she's presenting a personal statement.
I
There
haven't
may have-
heard, I
didn't
haven't
ask you
heard
to do
what
it.
asked for. I mean, what I believe is happening right now is every board member will have an opportunity to say whatever they want, ask whatever questions they would like. If you would like, after that discussion, to endorse it or any portion of it or do anything with it, that's up to the board. But I don't know that, based on the comments I've heard so far, the board is anywhere near even having that question asked.
I'm going to process because the entire premise of presenting that was a personal statement to get to the facts. Yet the letter to the editor was published as board president. So I'm trying to understand how an individual statement can address what was stated out to be a board representation.
Robert, I'll try again. The letter that Maren sent, she believed that I said, yep, I'm good, let it go. But I don't believe that's what I communicated. We actually didn't talk live. It was only via email. And I had no sense that we were anywhere near a final letter. And, you know, whether it's the article of the or a letter, the letter, a letter, this letter, etc., you know, and I guess I would appeal to all of you to say, have you ever miscommunicated in an email? I think that's what happened between Maren and Dr. Shadow and I. And as soon as it was brought to my attention, I alerted both Maren, and in fact, I think it was actually the reporter who was the first one who let me know that the letter had gone. I didn't realize it until then. I believe that when I went back a day or two later, I saw emails from Maren that were dated much earlier that indicated she was going to send it. I didn't see them in time to say, no, I didn't want you to do that. But even, Robert, if I said, you know, Maren, send that letter right this second, attribute every ounce of it to me, what I'm saying to you is, there was a mistaken communication between Maren and Dr. Shadow and I. That letter was not authored by me, and if I was to have sent a letter to the editor, it would have been different. That would not have been the letter. But yes, I factually, in email, suggested that maybe we don't want to have the letter coming from you, Dr. Shadow. Maybe that's not appropriate. Maybe I'll send a letter to the editor.
Okay. Code of Ethics E.
It flat out was a mistake, Robert.
I understand, Madam President. I will recognize that authority rests with the Board of Education and will make no personal promises nor take any private action that may compromise the board. So if you're saying you didn't take personal action in the publication of the letter to the editor, misunderstanding or not, it was a board president letter that you've just stated, you just edited. There was a misunderstanding, but it was sent by district administration. Am I correct?
I guess that's correct.
Okay, that's fine. That's all I needed to clear up.
John?
But, yeah, you know, I too, when I read these accounts, I was like, where is all this coming from? I got pretty incensed, and so, you know, I was looking for clarity tonight to hear your opinion. We haven't spoken since all this has happened, and, you know, so I was looking for this conversation tonight, and I guess the one thing to clear it up some more, I mean, I understand what you've been saying about how the letter was created, but is there anything in there that you refute or, you know, wasn't an idea that, I guess, was, you know, developed amongst yourself and Maren and Dr. Shadow? I mean, are they trying to paint a different picture than what you were, is what I'm getting at, because that, you know, that would continue my outrage of what you know, reading about this, you know, the clips that, you know, you were quoted as saying, you know, I did not write this. So then I'm like, okay, well then somebody's drawn up a rosy picture of all this, but it's all, you know, are you comfortable with everything that's in there? Is that what you developed?
Oh, absolutely. With the position of it, yes. But
Okay.
I wouldn't have used those words. I might have, you know, represented it differently.
Okay.
Absolutely. Would you guys disagree with the position?
Madam President, would you...
Right. I mean, right. The thoughts of it.
Actually, I have no questions now. All right,
Okay.
I'll wait. Let you keep-
Sam?
And I'm also very grateful for some of the clarity. The one thing we all have to remember is all of the board members will have full-time jobs. which is why you probably were handling it via email in between trying to do your full-time job. And I appreciate that. And I also do know that sometimes picking up the phone is the better solution. What I am troubled with, just to be very candid with this entire thing, is that a letter was sent without you actually sending an email saying, I am fine with sending the letter as is. And I know maybe there was an anxiousness to get it out there, but I need to be honest with you. It troubles me that whoever from the district office, whether it was Dr. Shadow or Maren, who sent that send button, before it went out, knowing how sensitive this topic is, I really do wish that the three of you could have had a conference call or had some FaceTime, because email sometimes is the wrong approach. The way you read an email and the way someone else reads it, it could be two ships passing in the night. We all know that because you hit the nail on the head. We've all had something like that happen, where you sent something and it was taken very different than the intent that it was meant. And it does trouble me, but I think at this point, it's a very good lesson. And, how do we go from here?
That's a great point. It's worth pointing out that the Democrat did know fully that it was not my letter. And as you know, they chose to publish it anyway. But they knew, I guess, I can't recall when we spoke, whether it was that Thursday or that Friday, but Warren Cooper called me and he read me a specific paragraph and he said to me, did you write this paragraph? And my answer was no, I had not. And in fact, I think that particular paragraph I hadn't even provided any edits to. I had provided edits to the letter that was sent to me. And you're right, and you can say whatever you want to say. It was flat out a mistake. I was trying hard to respond. I was trying to give Dr. Shadow some edits, and I was also trying to give him the suggestion and the idea that maybe you shouldn't be sending this letter. I get how sensitive an issue it is, because he was attacked pretty strongly in the news article. So I understand. I understand the need to respond. I was suggesting that maybe you shouldn't send the letter, maybe I should send the letter. But I did not mean or intend to say, send this letter and send it over my name. But, candidly, you guys, I hope this isn't the issue for this board. I hope the issue for this board is whether we're comfortable that we're doing what we need to do for the kids in this district. It's absolutely a mistake that letter went, but the issue is the information that's been given to the public about some emails that were brought out by an Oprah Act that I think misrepresent. They do not represent the state's conclusions. And I realize that it's tied to some very emotional issues, but the issue is what the state's findings were. And does the public understand that the state has shown us 4 items that they want the district to do, but they, in essence, said they were procedural issues.
Madam President, there were procedural issues, and I do want to start a school year off on a positive foot. But the publication, when you read your letter, no one got hurt, is what you said. That letter, regardless of authorship, is now stating to every student, pardon me, it's the letter to the editor that you published, that you said district administration wrote. That was a misunderstanding.
Wait, Robert, let me clarify. There's no misunderstanding about who wrote it. Dr. Shadow and Maren wrote the letter.
I heard that.
I provided edits.
I understand.
I provided a suggestion that maybe the
talk about the
should-
message of that letter.
Okay.
I want to move on as well in this year, but I don't think you've addressed it in your personal statement, nor has this board considered what you've basically validated in that letter, is that no one got hurt. What have we learned over the last year? Are we going to offer saying, listen, we learned this? No one got hurt. That I find objectionable, because students that have to complain and need to have an adult or someone that they can trust, what we've come out and said, don't worry. Yeah, you've heard through your grapevine, through the locker room. And by the way, I did bring an HIB complaint to Ms. Liss through proper chain of command when I was made aware of it, that I thought of allegations and I wanted it investigated. This is your 4-part response, Ms. Liss, specifically the February baseball meeting. I'm not here to discuss that, but your letter closed all that. The district administration needs to address and open the door for students to come in and feel safe. Your letter didn't do that. It did the opposite.
Robert, when you say my letter, what letter are we referring to?
The letter to the editor that came out as board president, Bev Thorne, that said no one was hurt. What have we learned from it? The investigation. Do kids feel safe? We want to start a good year here. Great idea. But when no one was hurt, and we know for a fact that there's issues and there's other things that are derivative works from that investigation, what's your letter say to a student, to a parent? You stood at Voorhees graduation and spoke from the perspective of a mom and a parent and a board member. Yet, it's a black and white statement in the letter to the editor. No one was hurt. If you'd like me to read it, I brought it with me, but I don't think we need to.
I didn't write the letter, and I didn't intend to authorize the letter to be published. I don't know what else to tell you.
So, is the letter going to be retracted because it was written by district administration and maybe a corrected version that says what we might truly believe and feel and want to move on from?
We can certainly talk about that as a board, if that's what we'd like to do. I'd love to hear from some other people. Megan, Gary, Roger, Jane, John?
Well, along those lines, I mean, Robert, is that something steps you want to see the board take?
I don't know yet.
Have a retraction to the letter and have, craft it amongst ourselves?
I'm not prepared to, I probably would support that, but right now I don't have all the facts, and I'd like to know, particularly on the accountability side, because the board's, as I said, the board's integrity and independence has been violated because we basically gave the letter to
Robert,
be...
I'm a little bit confused because I didn't intend to authorize the letter, but if
But it was.
I did,
And Dr.
you
Shadow
also
or
sent a
Maren
letter
should have
to
known.
the editor as well.
You're right, and I'm glad you brought it up, because you brought it up last Wednesday evening. When you called me after my original request, which was very explicit, I asked you to recuse yourself, consider it. But I also asked that based until an investigation is done and a finding of fact is done, that district administration be precluded from participating both in executive session and discussion, and that if rice notices need to be issued, I copied Ms. Liss, and I asked, please consider this. You're right, I did send a letter to the editor, which I might add was never published. It was regarding the tablets. It was to what you admitted in the budget meeting in March. You didn't have enough information on to spend $500,000. It's on NJ.com. It was never published on, but I did post it to line. And in fact, I sent it at 2 o'clock or so that day to the letter to the editor. Yet Dr. Shadow made a snarky comment at that budget meeting that night because he had been somehow contacted by the editors. God bless him, he's in the community. But if he has that type of backdoor into the editorial channels of the Democrat or other papers, this letter should never have been published.
Robert, the part that I'm not understanding though is you're very angry that a letter would have been sent with my name. Let's assume it was
Oh, I didn't answer. I sent the letter under my name,
Robert,
my
the question
email,
I have
and I
is,
didn't use district resources.
Why is it okay for you to send the letter,
4
but not for
points.
someone else to?
Robert E. Becker, Gmail, my personal email. I specifically disclosed it, and I brought a copy this night, and it's on the email servers here for anybody who wants to do an Oprah. It is my personal opinion. It didn't come from district resources, nor was it written by district administration. It is my personal opinion. Your letter was a district statement. That is the very black and white difference between my March letter and your letter 2 weeks ago. If you don't understand it, I don't know how to make it more clear. You use district resources for a statement that's not true, published on behalf of the board. Mine was a personal comment, which specifically went to process.
When you say I use district resources, you're suggesting that I asked Dr. Shadow to write a letter for me? I didn't, Robert, not at all.
So then the district administration took it upon themselves to do this?
Dr. Shadow, Maren, initiated a letter to the editor.
Okay, that's
correct.
fine with me. I'm fine with that. That's clarity. Ms. Liss, I have no questions, but I think we need to, I will not bring up any further questions based on Ms. Thorne's comment because Dr. Shadow and Ms. Smagala have rights.
So I think this has gone way too far. I mean, from the standpoint that we've been dealing with this for a long time. We've done all the appropriate steps. We've sent it to the appropriate professionals. I'm not a professional. can only deal with what they tell us we did right and what we did wrong. We've now gotten statements back. Unfortunately, the person who was doing the state investigation decided to share other information that's unrelated to this whole, what they sent to us. So I think somewhere along the lines, we need to kind of deal with that. But outside of that, we did what they told us to do. We've got the paperwork to back it up, and we're doing what the state has made recommendations to us. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, there's not much more we can do as a board in order to protect ourselves in the future from saying we did right or wrong. As for the letter, I mean, it was a mistake. It was sent, and we're dealing with it now. Enough said. Let's move on.
I agree with Roger. I think it's time we got to move on and just kind of terminate. We've gone through 3 investigations. Personally, I think that's enough. We're doing what we're supposed to be doing. The administration is doing what they're supposed to be doing. The letter was a mistake. It was a mistake. It's brought up. It's been explained to the board, and I think most of us accept that letter. I think it's time to concentrate on the opening of school. I think that's very important right now. I mean, we're going to open school in 2 weeks. And I think we have more responsibilities right now. We have to get this done.
Yeah, I agree. I think it is time for us to move on, and I'm very glad that you made Dr. Bernatica's letters public at the beginning tonight, because now we know, specifically, the public knows what the 4 action items are, and one of them is to convene a meeting of district and community members to review and possibly change our HIB policy. So again, looking forward, we can hopefully make a positive change involving a lot of different, not just district members, but members of the community.
Yeah, I agree with what everyone said, and I don't know, Robert, what you're looking for in terms of redress, because I don't know how much more Bev could explain.
She gave me everything I needed. We have people that masqueraded as elected public officials publishing letters on behalf of the board.
I do know Well, I do know from some personal experience and professional experience that very often a board president or the board will ask the administration to write a letter. And then, well, I know you didn't, but it happens to us because they have all the facts. And I know for sure, I have very close personal experience that it happens sometimes. The board will say to the administration, please write the letter because you have all the facts. So I'm just telling you, it happens.
That's fine.
Anybody else? Okay, I think it's time to move to the public comment session of the meeting. During this portion of the meeting, the public is invited to address the board with any questions, comments, or concerns on educational issues and school matters of community interest. The public is requested to sign the register that we have at the podium for this purpose, and please state for us your name, address, and your comments. In this case, if you have questions, I think what we're going to try to do is note those questions and then address all of the questions, because we're concerned that if we address individual questions, it may delay us and keep us from getting to everyone who may want to speak to us. So Susan is going to note if there are questions that you have related to these issues. So I don't know, are we going to, do we need to limit the time, guys, or do you want to go as long as we can?
The agenda says 30 minutes, but it's
Okay, well, let's just see. Okay, is there anyone who'd like to address the board?
Good evening. My name is Maren Smagala. I am the District Communications Coordinator for this district. I feel I need to speak tonight in regards to the response letter sent under Bev's name that was called into question by the Democrat and obviously by Mr. Becker. I want to make it very clear that I would never put someone's name to something without their permission. I have an email from Bev confirming that we had her permission, saying if you'd like to send it over my signature, you're welcome to. I did respond to her email and wrote that we would be sending the letter with her signature. I'm sorry that she did not see that in the time frame. Because she used the word send, Dr. Shadow and I did believe that her edits were final, and Dr. Shadow said I could send the letter to the Democrat. The letter was written with input from all three of us. I'm not sure what Bev's conversation was with Warren Cooper when asked about the letter, but it's a shame that the facts were either not told or that she was misquoted in the paper. Whatever the situation, the lack of facts in regards to the letter has hurt my credibility. I've worked full-time for this district for 6 years, and in that time, I feel I've made great strides to keep our parents more informed, be a source of help to them when they had questions, and to generate more positive publicity, particularly in regards to student achievements. I've done nothing wrong. I did what I was allowed to do or told to do. And that is my statement.
Thank you, Maren.
Anyone else?
My name is Stephanie Vassallo. I live in Glen Gardner. I am a member of the community as well as a parent of a Voorhees high school student and athlete. Overall, our child has enjoyed attending Voorhees, and my husband and I have both found that when you ask a Voorhees students if they like attending Voorhees, the overall resounding answer is yes. Due to this fact, I have spent most of the past year looking for a home for us within the Voorhees School District so that our child may continue to attend and graduate from Voorhees High School. Needless to say, I have been remiss in my attendance of school board meetings. As of tonight, that ends. The preponderance of evidence that has come out of late is staggering and eye-opening. Educational professionals in this district are treating official school business and matters unlawfully and unethically and working overtime to cover their tracks. There are no underlying facts to this case. There is only purposeful, well-schemed out misrepresentations and mishandling of monies, duties, responsibilities, and obligations. Ever since becoming a mother, I have made it my mission to protect my child and any other child around me from bullies and self-serving individuals who care solely to act unethically and selfishly seeking their own advantage. Never in my life did I expect the people that I needed to protect my child and others from would ironically be the very people hired, employed, and paid by this school district who are supposed to work solely to benefit an entire student body of coming-of-age young men and women spread out over several surrounding townships, and yet, sadly, this is indeed the case. Dr. Shadow, members of the board, you signed an oath of ethics. You are under sworn contract to act ethically and morally without bias under all circumstances at all times. You have failed miserably, and now your refusal to act ethically and work in the best interests of the students has been exposed. You have forgotten that we, the taxpaying community, pay your salaries and you work for us. Again, for the sole purpose of doing what is in the best interest of our young men and women, your students, in an only ethical manner. The bullying, intimidation, and harassment continues. Due to my reaching out in an informational email to other parents, I am now, too, the victim of bullying and intimidation, as I am banned from receiving any information regarding a team sport my own child plays on. To the victim and families that have suffered bullying under the leadership of Dr. Shadow and this board, we apologize. We have failed you as a community, as this has gone on far too long, undetected, right under our noses. However, tonight, now that veil of misrepresentations has been lifted and the facts are out for all to view. Tonight, we fail no more. To that end, and that end only, please join me in calling for the immediate resignations of Dr. Charles Shadow, Board President Beverly Thorne, Board Attorney Brenda Liss, Voorhees Athletic Director Al Stump, and any other district employee that has chosen to conduct themselves in the same shameful and unethical manner while pretending all the while to be forthright, blameless, ethical, and free from any and all wrongdoing. As a community, we can do better, we deserve better, and now on behalf of all of our young men and women currently attending Voorhees, as well as those that will attend in the future, we demand better. Thank you.
Madam President, may I ask one question of Ms. Risala? I have a duty. I don't want to ask any other questions, but would you just care to expand that on more on that you were banned from team sports emails? Are you stating a district, pardon me, let me ask, a district email or another group email for a team sport?
A group email for
So it's not the district email server? Correct. Okay, I just wanted to clear that up because we would address it if it was. Thank you.
Anyone else like to address the board?
My name is Colleen Ingram. I'm from Lebanon Township, New Jersey. The trust of our community has been broken. The fraudulent, I'm not sure if that's the right word, mistakenly sent email on behalf of the Board of Education to the Hunterdon Democrat, signed by Bev Thorne, at the behest of Dr. Shadow and Maren Smagala. The way that that has all come out, I feel for Maren, I feel for the board, who wasn't consulted about the letter. From what I understand, the board didn't know that was being sent. I feel that as educational leaders of the community and for volunteers in our district, you are appointed to advocate for our kids and for their well-being. I feel like my faith has been lost by you saying that that no student was hurt and there was no injury to these young kids. It's not the truth. And you have to tell the truth. It's not fair to the people who have spoken and have written and have communicated their truths. These kids who have felt by coming forward and by speaking to you that they would have some ears and some hearts and some minds, but it's upsetting, and I feel that it's because of a lack of leadership. I too would ask for the board to consider asking for the superintendent's resignation. I don't believe that you deserve one more penny from us. Thank you for serving.
John Mashoni from Tewksbury Township. I don't really know why I came tonight, but now I understand why I'm here. Watch your thoughts because they become your words. Watch your words because they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your character. Watch your character because it becomes your reputation. I put a lot of time and investment over the last few years trying to help the reputation of this district because its reputation of the community turns around and becomes your support from the community and the ability to keep doing all the great things done here. The conversation tonight is about that last step, the reputation. But the problem starts way back here at the beginning. And that's where I think the real failure is. Coached sports for over 30 years, hundreds of games, thousands of practices. I know everything that can go wrong. I know I've lost my cool. I know I've yelled at players, yelled at referees, they've yelled at me. I know athletes were injured in practices when I was alone with them, which is not what's supposed to be done. I also know they've been injured in games. I've gone home, discussed with my wife, which of these people might end up suing me. I was also an administrator for many years and was sued because of an accident that occurred, not associated with the team I was coaching. I also know that I sat with those athletes one-on-one and talked about problems they had. Race, sexual orientation of their parents, divorce that they were going through or had gone through, how it was affecting them. And I also wonder if I'll ever coach again because the ability to sit one-on-one with an athlete like that just opens you up to even more trouble. So I understand that part of it. But as the president of the Tewksbury Athletic Association, I also instituted background checks and watched 3 coaches scurry away the next week. I also know that when I coached in Piscataway, I sat in a room with a coach who was having sex with a 12-year-old and a 14-year-old. We didn't know that at the time, of course. It's a very public trust when you send athletes out on a bus to a field where there's no other adults around. And when you start to have the consideration, there needs to be a process for careful evaluation of what's going on. I know nothing about the incident that started this, but I do know tie should not go to the athlete. It should not go to the adult in this case. It should go to the protection of the athletes. My kids are both graduates of Voorhees, recent graduates. My son recently graduated from George Washington University, where he was an athlete there all 4 years. This past year, he spent 3 trips to the emergency room, several nights in the hospital because of his athletic endeavors. But I don't fear for him. The only time I feared for him as an athlete was when he was at Voorhees. There are processes that have been developed, de facto standards. What Hunterdon Central does in terms of getting anonymous feedback from the students should be a part of the process here. The fact that it is still not so many years into the development of new coaching standards is a failure of this board and of this administration. It is time to start getting back to taking it seriously and starting at the beginning, because otherwise you will end up here with the reputation sullied again. Thank you.
John, I do want to let you know that this board did work with the administration for a change that took place for the first time following the spring sports season this year. Every student, the parents of every student who participated in an extracurricular activity, sport or non, were given the opportunity, they were given a survey and given the opportunity to provide input on their child's experience.
Yes,
so that information, we have begun that process.
It's not anonymous.
It's sent to your email.
Right. It is not anonymous.
the responses are not anonymous?
Well, there's an easy way to track that.
Right.
I don't know.
Okay.
The responses were.
Okay, well, that's a great point. I guess the first step is getting input. Maren, do you know how that monkey survey works? When responses are provided, are they attributed to the person who provided them?
Not to my knowledge there, and I would never even know how to get in there to look at that. We never would.
But there is a web.
It is individually tracked on monkey surveys.
I'm sorry, SurveyMonkey is
But-
anonymous as far as I'm concerned. I would never, ever.
Okay, well, we can look into that. I guess the important point is that we are at least getting input from parents at this point, and we'll see what we can do to assure that it's anonymous.
After you thought it was a stellar idea to rehire a coach that not only has no coaching qualifications, nor is he a teacher, but had written, documented bullying incidences written up against him, but then sent us the survey. Great, it's working great. Your choice was wonderful.
Dee, did you want to address the board?
Yes, my name is Dee Palmer. I'm from Lebanon Township, and I am the parent of the student that was definitely injured last June. And he was not the only student. There were plenty. It was that entire baseball team that was subjected to sexual innuendos at the cost of a special needs student, and ridicule and physical abuse to my son. So to say that that didn't happen, and to say there was an investigation by Warren County prosecutor is wrong. There was a report taken, but there was no investigation. So if you know something backdoor, I've received all the paperwork, and there was no investigation. I sat in the room with Miss Liss when my son gave his testimony to what happened, and she was physically disturbed. She wrote a page of recommendations which were redacted, so none of us can know what those recommendations were for this coach. Certainly our board did not take any of these recommendations because he was put right back into place. Of course, he did not have any senior players, or very few, playing for him because many students chose not to play. Those students were injured. Their lives were changed. They were robbed of a senior year playing a sport that essentially they have played their entire lives. That is injury. That is robbed. You robbed the boys from that privilege that they deserved. And this is not a first-time incident. Mr. Matson was removed from a coaching position in 2007 for throwing a chair at a student. After this incident was reported, Mr. Matson had derogatory t-shirts made which ridiculed the complainant. He actually distributed the shirts to students to wear in the gym. Again, the administration failed to hold Mr. Matson accountable, and a victim was allowed to be victimized by his abuser. He was removed from as basketball coach, but he was awarded the varsity baseball coach position. The administration's message to the students was and still is, assault, ridicule, and abuse of power at the hands of a coach is acceptable. And if you want to participate in athletics, you have to sit down, shut up, and take it. And as John said, we shouldn't have to worry about our children on the fields, on a court, anywhere when they're playing athletics at Voorhees High School. To further that, to show the pattern here that this board and this administration have ignored, in 2009 or 2010, I have the newspaper article, Superintendent Shadow approved a convicted sex offender receive accolades for his coaching career at Voorhees High School. The student that this coach assaulted was a member of the North Hunterdon-Voorhees student body, and if it's possible to make matters worse, it was a special needs student. This administration approved the award be given to a convicted sex offender with total disregard for the victim or her family.
That's a lie.
It's in the Express Times
I
that an
don't care
award
what
was
it
given.
is, it's a lie.
Dr.
I
Shadow.
never approved anything.
Dr. Shadow.
An award was given. Who approved that then?
Dr. Shadow, I discussed this with you, with the full board. Statement of fact. Is Mr. Louis DeMare here? You received an email from Louis DeMare.
I did.
You did. You said it would not happen. That was, pardon me, sir, I will respect you. Just let me lay out the facts, because we did discuss it. There might be a little bit of incomplete facts there, but I will lay it out, and I can provide the documents. Mr. DeMare sent you an email because he was contacted by his constituents.
I talked to him on the phone.
You did, and he followed up with an email, and you said it would not happen the day before.
And to the best of my knowledge, it was not supposed to happen.
And on Monday,
The man never walked in that gymnasium When I found out that something had happened, I was appalled.
Dr. Shadow.
I didn't approve anything.
No, Dr. Shadow, that's not what you said.
I
Monday
didn't-
after, would you like me to explain this?
Not
The
if
Mon-
you lie.
I can prove it, sir, and I will.
Well,
Monday after, there was an email that you never responded to the best of my knowledge, so you may spoke to him. A few months ago, this matter came up in this discussion as terms of my concerns as to pattern. Your response in that room was no accountability. It was a quote, and I will rephrase it for you to see if you recall. That was unfortunate for the district. I didn't hear any ownership. And if it is as you state that you didn't authorize that, then, Mr. Shadow, would it be in the personnel records of those individuals that they practiced insubordination?
I don't deal in the public on personnel issues.
I didn't bring up a personal person. I asked if the process has been honored.
The process was not only honored, if you go to the personnel file, you will see a result of the meeting that was held, at which my secretary took notes, that my HR director was at, that the principal and athletic director were there. That's all I'm going to say. I'm telling you right now that whatever was printed in that newspaper is a bold-faced lie if it's there.
It's an express time.
Far be it from me to accuse the fourth estate of misrepresenting the truth.
It mentions the two coaches that accepted on his behalf because, of course, he would not have been allowed in a gymnasium.
It did happen, and I was appalled, and it has been addressed.
Happened on your watch.
An incident I heard Mr. Becker bring up of February 13th was when the athletic director, principal, and vice principal lied directly to our student, saying that the baseball meeting, which was February 13th, was a school meeting. It was advertised as such, and he was blindsided. And it, again, shows a pattern of bullying from the administrators, that they lied to me directly in an email, and they did this to one of their students, the students that they are supposed to protect. So not only did the incident occur in June 2012, it continued through the year. There was injuries, and it wasn't just my son. It was to many, many students, to all the students that you don't protect. And the leadership of Dr. Shadow is certainly not one of integrity and morality, and Ms. Thorne has proved she's willing to align herself with Dr. Shadow at the expense of our students. In the last 14 months, the board, say Mr. Becker, has not displayed the courage to be individual decision makers. I plead to the board, it is time to heal this broken community and move on without Dr. Shadow and Beth Thorne.
And Brenda Liz.
Ms. Press, for the record, I would like just that it noted that I felt it a duty, and I referred to it earlier when I spoke to Ms. Liss about what was addressed regarding the mandatory baseball meeting at Voorhees. There's a response. There was a point-by-point question set that I had, which Ms. Liss did respond to, but I did my duty as a board member and brought it to the CSA and the board president. So the rest's above me, and I want it in the record, please.
Is there anyone else from the public who'd like to address the board?
Hi, my name is Kathy Labornia. I'm from Tewksbury Township. I have a question. Maren, did you say you have emails from Ms. Thorne that say that you should send out that?
I do have an email.
You do have an email, okay. So now that it's been made public that there is an email, would you consider a public apology to Maren?
Kathy, I'm sorry, is that your name? I did make a public apology earlier.
Oh, okay, so we should be in writing perhaps?
I did make a public apology to her.
Okay,
She
that's
doesn't
good.
call me personally.
Pardon me?
Her and I have talked personally as well.
Okay, so that's great. Okay. that's okay with Maren. She's done a terrific job.
I agree,
Okay.
completely,
In the
100%.
past 6 years, so I wouldn't want to see her reputation suffer. My other question is the board president allowed to send or respond on behalf of the board without their input or consent? Because I'm a little fuzzy on that, do you know?
Brenda? I'm
Is the board president allowed to send or respond to letters on behalf of the board without the board having input or consent?
I don't know what the law is, but I wouldn't do that. I would send a letter to the editor either as myself personally, or I would say, I am the president of the board, but I'm not speaking for the board.
So
That
did
would
the
be my
board know
intention.
that you were participating in the editing of this letter while you were doing it? So that I have to tell you, that seems less than honest to me. Because if you were going to be participating in any kind of way, whether it's just editing a little bit, but yet you say you agreed with everything they wrote, I would think that there would be at least one board member that would have known that you were participating in this.
No other board members knew.
Okay, so that's definitely something that needs to be corrected in the future, I would think, by you. Do you think so?
I was providing edits to Dr. Shadow.
Okay, so I guess the answer is no. You know what, this is all very straightforward. It's either yes or no. You know, you either will do it again or you won't do it again. It's that simple.
True.
So it sounds like you will do it again. So that concerns me then, that you're not really taking ownership of it. So that's my opinion.
Kathy, I'm a little confused. I'm not sure what you're asking me or saying. I did provide edits to Dr. Shadow. I did suggest to Dr. Shadow and to Maren that perhaps that I send a letter rather than Dr. Shadow send a letter.
Right, but you didn't consult with your board. So why were you even considering it when you had to ask all these other members? And maybe they would have said, you know what, Ms. Thornton, we don't think it's such a good idea. Then you wouldn't have had to waste time on your very busy day when you said you were in, you were out, you were running here and there, and you didn't know when were you going to send it, when were you going to send
There's
it.
no discussion there about whether I was sending it personally or as the president of the board. Of course that would be appropriate at that point in time. I hadn't made that determination.
But you were still involved in the process, and that time that you spent, as everyone else has suggested here, could be spent on more important things, right? Everybody said that now. More important things we have to get to the business running the school. So, you know.
If I can help here, maybe the miscommunication that I see going on is the clarification. What I wanted to hear clearly in your question when I asked you to repeat it was whether you were asking if a board president, or really it's the same for any board member, may write a letter and identify themselves as a board member, or whether they may do so on behalf of the board without getting the approval of the board. Those are two different things, and all board members should be clear on this, and members of the public as well. Any board member may write a letter to the editor saying whatever they want, as long as they identify themselves as a member of the Board of Education in the letter, and they also say that they are not speaking on behalf of the full board in that letter.
Okay, which is what this gentleman just said he did. I don't really.
Okay.
Okay, so he said he did that. So when you questioned him, you really didn't. There was nothing to question because he said it was
I specifically
personal.
disclosed in that, and it's on the public document. Anybody here can pull it up. And I didn't see that in Ms. Thorne's letter.
Right, so he
That's my point.
seemingly did it accurately, right?
I believe I did.
I haven't seen that letter, and I guess that's what he has described, yes.
Okay.
Any board member, whether it's the board president or not, may only send a letter on behalf of the full board if the board has approved it.
See, and that's where I have a problem, because I think that rather than spending a lot of time on something that your board may then say, boy, we really don't think you should do that.
But what I think I heard Ms. Thorne say was that in that discussion she had with Dr. Shadow and Maren, she hadn't gotten to a point yet where she said it was going to be on behalf of the board, or it was going to be her as board.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think that should have been the first thing, not the last thing. I think if you're editing something, you need to know from what point of view, okay, the reader's going to take it, and what point of view you're going to write it. That would have been the first thing I think that, you'd want to do.
Miss-
Kathy, at
Miss-
the time I was editing the letter, I thought I was editing a letter that was authored by Dr. Shadow. It is absolutely correct that I communicated that maybe I should send a letter over my signature. I didn't know or mean or intend that anyone else would transmit a letter, but it was part of my discussion. Yes, hey, maybe you shouldn't send a letter. You know, I gave you my edits.
But
for
it
your
was in
letter.
Maren's email.
I
She
gave
just
you my
mentioned
letter.
it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I'm telling you is the misunderstanding.
That's not a
didn't mean-
misunderstanding.
I
That's where I
didn't
think
mean-
everybody has a problem.
I didn't
That's
mean
not a
that letter
misunderstanding.
to go.
Oh, okay. Okay. And you know what? I think if you took ownership of this, a lot of people wouldn't be as angry as they are. But I really feel like you're like doing a two-step here.
Kathy,
You're
I am
not
taking
going to
ownership.
take ownership
I
of this.
participated in the misunderstanding. I absolutely
The
did.
word misunderstanding isn't even accurate. I'm sorry, it's not. You sent an email to Maren to say, release this letter. But I don't see that, but that's a misunderstanding.
No, I don't believe that I did do that.
Okay. So she doesn't have an email then? You don't believe you did that? Excuse me, I didn't hear you, Dr. Shadow.
She didn't say release it.
So she does not have an email. Maren does not have an email that
We
says
both have
that.
an email.
I'm sorry?
We both have an email. Same email.
I'm confused. I don't know what you're saying. I'm sorry.
She did not say release it as you put, feel free to send it under my signature. Okay. That's how we interpret it.
Alrighty then.
And we didn't follow it up with a phone call. That's my
Will you
fault.
do that for all letters? You follow it up with a phone call?
Either a phone call and email. In this case, an email went out trying to verify, is it okay? He sent it.
So that email wouldn't have sufficed, so you would have followed it up with a phone call.
Probably.
All right, thank you.
Madam, just for clarity, because my integrity was challenged by Ms. Thorne, I brought the letter that I published. It's dated March 21st, 2013, 2:09 p.m. by the way, which is when I sent it to the email news@hcdemocrat.com. I want to read it so everybody knows. This is me speaking, not a board member. Dear editor, I submit the attached letter for your consideration. I will be voting no on the NHV BOE budget tonight. Disclosure, in capital letters. The opinions expressed are solely my own and do not represent the position of the North Hunterdon-Voorhees Regional High School Board of Ed. I am one of two NHV BOE members representing Califon-Tewksbury, and I gave him my phone number, which you can read it if you want. I also disclosed it on this letter, which grammar errors included. It's on the public server. People pointed it out. And at the end of the letter, the exact same errors are, the exact same disclosure is there. The difference is that I disclosed it, as I brought up earlier. That was not done on district property, but I did CC my Board of Ed account in case this matter came up like it did tonight.
Robert, I'm sorry if you thought I questioned your integrity.
You did. You did last Wednesday and you did
I
tonight.
asked you about the letter that you sent.
No, you tried to equate my letter to your letter.
No, I asked about it.
Okay, we'll disagree.
Anyone else from the public who
Here's-
wants to address the board? Yes.
No, thank you.
Good. My name is Jennifer Lindenberry. I'm a Washington Township resident and a Voorhees High School graduate, and I'm the aunt of the student in question that you allege was not harmed. So I take umbrage to the fact that you come here and you say nobody was harmed. Somebody was harmed, so I'm going to take a little of your time here. For the folks that are here, thank you for coming. This is an example of what has been going on for this family that wasn't harmed for 14 months. They come to this meeting every month. They ask this board to listen to them. They pretend to listen and they talk circles. Your witness tonight, thank you for coming.
Wait for Dr. Shadow to come back because he should hear you.
He doesn't want to hear me because he's heard me before.
He has a responsibility as a superintendent to be here the entire time the public speaks. And if he's got to go to the bathroom, we will wait.
Yeah, we'll wait.
Wait, we'll wait.
We'll wait. Can someone,
Can someone
I did, okay, thanks.
Okay, so I'll start again. Jennifer Lindaberry, Voorhees High School graduate, proud graduate of the school until 14 months ago. I'm embarrassed to say Voorhees High School was my home. I stood here in February with coaches that were my coach 30 years ago and listened to them tell a story that wasn't the truth. Questioned my integrity. So let me, just for the people who haven't been here, 14 months ago, a coach grabbed a student athlete by the throat. I witnessed it, was there. Was I called by Ms. Liss for an interview? No. I was identified as a witness, wasn't called as a witness. But her report said her witnesses' accounts were, let me get the word, were not credible, and the stories vary. A young child once said to me, I didn't lie, you didn't ask me the right questions. If the shoe fits. So a student athlete reported this behavior to Ricky Kurtz, the only coach that wasn't here in February when the varsity coach was retiring. It was immediately reported to him through text messages. Text messages he acknowledged. Go back. We subpoenaed from Verizon Wireless. They were presented to the board. They were read to the public on more than one occasion. Those text messages acknowledged the behavior. If that's not enough to conclude or to substantiate there was abuse, we stood here in February. The athletic director's secretary got up, Ann Bonavita. She didn't say it didn't happen. She was on the third baseline. I saw her. I saw the event. I saw her see it. She stood up here and said, now don't quote me because these meetings are recorded.
No, you can't mention an employee of this system.
It was in a public meeting. She stood up here and said it in a public meeting. If you had a recording, you would hear. Okay, but you don't have a recording because we don't have a recorder. But she stood up here and she said it was either a learning or a teaching moment, but that's how she referred to it. And since it happened, not once has the coach publicly acknowledged that he didn't do it. 7 years ago, he did behave in a similar manner. So it's hard to believe that we could spend $19,000 on an investigation and we can't substantiate anything. I think the right questions weren't asked. That's my belief. So, I'm really upset about the letter. If the letter's out there with the board's name on it, I felt when I read it that Ms. Smagala was the next one to be thrown under the bus. It's my personal opinion, but she was the next one to fall on the sword. Definitely. Did Superintendent Shadow say, I wrote it? No. Ms. Smagala jumped up and said, I wrote that letter with Dr. Shadow. Dr. Shadow not once been accountable. If it was a mistake, somebody needs to be held accountable. Okay, it was a mistake. We hold people accountable when they make mistakes. We don't just say okay and chalk it up and let them make another mistake. Coach made mistakes 7 years ago. We just chalk it up and say it's okay, we'll bring it back again. It's another student, it doesn't really matter, because it's not really important. We're going to move on to the next important thing and bring our students back to school. My last thing. So we talk about retaliation. Talk about repeated behavior. Was anybody at the 2013 graduation, Voorhees High School? Okay? These students walked up there. 2 students exercised their rights, had the guts, to ask to have their diplomas handed to them by Mr. Becker, because they respected him, because they've seen what's gone on here for 14 months and have earned respect for this gentleman. They asked to have their diplomas handed to them by this man. He stood up to hand them their diplomas. And what did your superintendent do? Go to the video. He turned his back to those 2 students. Is that the behavior that we want from our superintendent?
I got out of the way.
Oh, you got out of their way. A little bit. You got out of their way.
Nobody told me.
You turned your back to a student. Go to the video.
Nobody told me this was coming. This was right out of the blue.
So does that mean you can't act like a gentleman?
I moved out of the way.
You turned your back. I saw it on the video. I was in a classroom.
You say I think I did, but it wasn't intentional.
Saw it on the video. It's not
It wasn't
somebody's
intentional.
graduation video.
Really blowing stuff out, looking for things.
I'm not looking for anything. I'm looking for the truth, the underlying facts.
16 months.
I know, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
It is. It is.
We came here 16 months ago simply asking, remove a coach who behaved inappropriately.
Absolutely.
We're here today asking you to remove board members and a superintendent who covered it up, who didn't take appropriate action, and now we're here asking for their job. They pulled out every tool in the shed to save a coach's job, and now we're here asking you to take their jobs.
Exactly.
This community is outraged, but we keep talking in circles. We don't acknowledge any behavior. We don't accept accountability for anything. If you'd like to accept accountability, you can talk about about it. It's time for a leader.
Procedural.
It's a time for a leader in this district to stand up and do the right things. Beg you to use some common sense. If there was no inappropriate behavior in the first place, we wouldn't be here today. There wouldn't have to be a need to forge letters and cover up things. Thank you.
My name is Kevin Gachoda. I live in Hunterdon Lane in Lebanon Township. Like the gentleman who spoke earlier, you got to give me a few moments because you sort of wonder why you're here. I really don't want to be here. It's the second time I've addressed the Board of Education. I'm not sure if any of you were on the board the first time. Bev, you may have been. Again, I'm going to ask for a little bit of patience, a stream of consciousness. I'm a parent of one of the students that we alleged was subject to bullying and intimidation, not once, but twice. The second incident, the one, has more notoriety. The first time we had an incident was in June of 2004. I tried to handle it the right way. Went and saw athletic director at the time, Sal Patty. Make a long story short, it was the same coach that's been mentioned. This is not about the coach. This is about accountability. But I have to tell you the story, okay? And at the end of that meeting, I was thanked for coming in, that they would handle it. I followed up with a call, Mr. Patty, and said, just do me one favor, make sure that there is a record of our meeting face-to-face. I have minutes of the meeting here. I have pictures of the bruises of my son here, that it was documented. On March 2nd of 2005, okay, there was an incident in Millburn away boys basketball game where my son was physically handled. And that's what I have the pictures of. I wish it was just appalling. Again, I tried to handle it the same way. I went to the athletic director, right, went through, I got stonewalled. The letters I got from the investigation, it was supposedly done by the superintendent's office, not the superintendent directly, just misstated the facts. I mean, they alluded to things that had nothing to do, were totally out of context. 3 months after the incident, I was able to sit down with you, Dr. Shackle, face to face, if you remember our meeting. And I have notes of that meeting. And coming here today, I grabbed my binder, and I really didn't want to rip it out because it's like ripping a scab off, okay? But some of the comments I asked you, or some of the points I asked you at that meeting, were right here. What were the goals for the athletic department in North Hunterdon-Voorhees? What about accountability? A word I'm hearing over and over again. I didn't write down your answer. All right. I also asked, should the coaches be accountable for the same standards of that the students are? And at the time, this is the same hand that I had with me, which was dated 2000-2008, Voorhees High School Parent Athletic Handbook. All right. You said, of course. In closing, I made some comments to you that my son shouldn't be here. All right? It was hell. The victims become villains. Everybody rallies. They rally the way. I don't know if it's a unionist mentality or what. But we lost friends. We have people that don't speak to us today. We even offered to let my son come to North Hunterdon for his senior year. Even during his senior year playing basketball at Voorhees, the coach, who was no longer a basketball coach, the gentleman keeping score, wore a sweatshirt with his name on the back of it every game. Okay? I asked at the time, I suggested education and certification for your coaches. I know they're all teachers. I'm the son of 2 educators. I was appalled that educators stuck their head in the sand, much like the administration has done. It's a form of ostrich management. Stick my head in the sand, it's going to go away. All right? Now, being a coach at the youth level, I had to go get a Rutgers certification. All right? I suggested that to you at the time. Is there a course like that? It's free, by the way. All right? I suggested a formal review process and a policy for no tolerance on bullying. I'm just appalled that I'm sitting in the back room, coming here because of a little hubbub about the letter, which frankly, I don't know enough about to comment on. All right? Well, what really appalls me that 10 years, almost 10 years after the fact, we're still talking about intimidation, bullying. No one ever said the incidents of my son never happened. All right? Things have happened again. I know of another incident that was brought to the attention besides the one these parents went through with their child. Okay? And you lose a lot of sleep on these things. These are scabs. All right? And same thing. I was contacted by the press. I tried to take the high standard. And then I said, look, I came in, had a meeting with the coach, had a meeting with the superintendent. We said our piece, we shook hands, and we walked out. But at the end of the day, I'm sitting here and I'm listening to words that, and again, this gentleman spoke very eloquently, and he talked about respect and all these words that you people are saying up there, and they don't mean anything. 10 years later, we shouldn't do it. It is accountability. I do hold you accountable. And I am appalled that 10 years later, you still haven't accepted accountability. And I didn't come here with any agenda, because it hurts too much. This isn't a forum that I'm comfortable under. But I got to tell you, if you were going to do the right thing, you should resign.
Good evening. My name is Kathy Walsh. I was here almost a year ago in late August. I was accompanying my husband Mike, who was here to start an education foundation for this district. And that night, the Palmers were here, and they stood before this board, and they told the story of what happened to their son. That same night, another gentleman stepped forward. He had come from work, obviously. He was there in his shirt and tie, not related to the Palmers, but also named Palmer. He witnessed the incident. He expressed deep concern to this board about what he had seen. That night, Dr. Shadow, you assured the people in the public that you would get an independent investigator. You did not. You had the board's attorney conduct an investigation. That is not only improper, it demonstrates incredibly poor judgment. Because as you know, the board's attorney has one objective, and that is to safeguard the legal interests of this school district. It is not Ms. Liss's job to look out for the well-being of our students. It is yours. And so when you handed off that responsibility to her, you relinquished your duty under the state law and under this board's policies, which are on the website. Because even though there was no HID law when this gentleman had a problem with the same exact coach, there are laws now, since 2010, which this board should have adopted properly, which according to the DOE investigation, it did not. And which all the board members should be trained on, which according to the DOE investigation, apparently you have not been. Which every single person who comes in contact with our children should receive training, including athletic coaches. And apparently you have not been able to demonstrate that that occurred with the coach in question. And Dr. Shadow, that is your responsibility. if you had followed the policies of this board, which everyone can go read, just click on it, it's right on the home page, then you would have immediately had the school district bullying specialist and coordinator conduct an investigation. And then the results should have been given to the Palmers, and they would have had the right to appeal that. My understanding is that they did not agree. They were told there's no HIP violation here. They didn't agree. And they asked Ms. Thorne for their right to appeal, which is required under the law and under the policy that is available for everyone. And she denied them that right, and that right would have enabled the Palmers and their son and anyone who was a witness to that incident to come before you, board members, not Ms. Liss, because Ms. Liss was not elected by the people of this district. You were, and the law says it was your responsibility to listen, and you didn't. They were denied that appeal by Ms. Thorne. She told them, no, we're going to conduct some other kind of investigation. That happened in August. Then September, October, November, December, January, and most of February went by. The next time I was in this room was when you were all voting to reappoint that same coach. 6 months went by. I stood up before you then, and I will say it again. I honestly believe that anybody who voted yes to reappoint that coach was in violation of their ethical responsibility. The section of the code that you all signed and acknowledged said, I will vote to appoint the best qualified personnel. There is absolutely no way that man was the best qualified personnel for that coaching position. There is no way. I'm going to read one other policy to you. I would ask everybody else to read it. There are safeguards to the way we are supposed to hire athletic coaches. The policy is 3125. It's this board's policy. It was adopted, according to the website, on May 1st, 2001. It says, with regard to hiring athletic coaches, the board authorizes the superintendent to recommend the employment of qualified coaches for the district, interscholastic, and intramural athletic programs. The board will employ as athletic coaches only those persons who have experience in and knowledge of the specific sport, are properly certified, and possess the personal characteristics that qualify them to serve as role models to the pupils they coach. The superintendent shall advertise a vacancy in a coaching position by posting notice of the vacancy in the school district, by simultaneously advertising the vacancy by appropriate means throughout the region. The superintendent may thereafter recommend to the board the employment of any qualified candidate for the coaching position who possesses an instructional certificate issued by the New Jersey State Board of Examiners. In the event that no qualified, fully certified candidate applies for the coaching position, the superintendent may recommend to the board a candidate who is the holder of a county substitute certificate, provided that the superintendent has demonstrated to the county and superintendent that the vacant coaching position has been advertised and no qualified, fully certified candidate has applied for the position. The superintendent has attested in writing to the county superintendent the prospective employee's knowledge and experience in the sport, and the county superintendent has approved the employment of the candidate. An athletic coach employed under a county substitute certificate shall be employed for a single designated sports season. His or her employment shall not be necessarily limited to 20 days. Goes on to say that that same athletic coach shall be employed only for that one season. Well, we know that Mr. Mattson had been the baseball coach the previous season, and so I am asking this board to investigate whether this policy was followed. You need to know whether your superintendent advertised this position in district and in the region. You need to know whether there were no qualified applicants in that 6 months. You need to know if he made a written attestment to the county superintendent about Coach Mattson's qualifications for that job and whether he received approval from the county superintendent to make that recommendation to you. Because I'm a board member too, and yes, we all have full-time jobs, and we are very busy. We are not paid to do the kind of detailed background work. You guys operate on what is very much a leap of faith, that the people employed to do the job are doing the job. You have to trust that your administrators know the law and the policies and follow them. You have a policy committee. I'm asking that your policy committee undertake an investigation as to whether the proper procedure was followed and to make sure that in the future we do not hire athletic coaches who are not properly certified and who have not been accepted and approved by the county superintendent. I'm sorry I'm taking so long, but I think since many people read from the front of Dr. Vernatica's letter, perhaps we should turn it over and read his closing final statement, because the closing final statement on page 2 says, to be clear, the complaint investigation report requires the district, based on the findings of the report, to submit a corrective action plan to the DOE to address the HIB statutory and regulatory violations, plural, identified in the report. This is Dr. Vernatica acknowledging that there were statutory violations, and there were many. It is alarming that the official word from this administration and apparently from the board president are that it's really not that big of a deal. We're taking care of it. There's a list. We're checking off the list. It's all good. No, it isn't all good. Ms. Thorne, I do not know you. I sat in your position in the Lebanon Township Board of Education. I had the privilege to be their president for several years. It is unethical for you to take private action. You should not have been involved, frankly, in drafting a letter or editing a letter or authoring a letter defending Dr. Shadow without your board's approval. It is unethical. There is a very specific piece of the ethics code that prohibits you from taking private action. And the fact that the rest of you are not completely alarmed by that is really, really telling. You all signed the same thing. She cannot take private action, nor can any of you. And I think I wrote down what you said, Ms. Thorne. It was that you suggested that it should be in your name because I guess things had gotten pretty hot for Dr. Shadow in the media. You do not understand your role, frankly. You are not, it is not the board's role to protect the superintendent. The system of checks and balances is very specific. We elect all of you to make sure that this chief schools administrator does the job. It is not your job to protect him. And so what you said clearly indicates that there is a very blurring of the roles here. And I'm going to suggest that there is training available to every board member in the state of New Jersey. It is, you pay dues to the New Jersey School Boards Association. If you are unclear about your role, please find out. There are lots of resources available. Dr. Shadow, I'm hearing stories back to 2004. And if you authored that letter and you said that no one was injured, I respectfully suggest that you need to leave this position because you are ignoring the injury that your actions have caused. And Ms. Thorne, I respectfully suggest that a change of leadership is in order on this board, and I would ask that you step aside and allow maybe perhaps your vice president to lead the board. Thank you.
My name is Andrew Payton. In the course of my duties, I have responsibility for students who both will, are, and have attended both high schools. Tonight, as we, the members of the public, listen to the various ramifications of the discussion, we understood that you asked us to come to the microphone and ask questions of you, the board. And so I'd like to begin by asking this question. Does any board member here tonight believe that any of the pieces of information disclosed at this podium is new to you? I have to take it that every other member of the board was fully aware of all the other incidental pieces of information that were said here at the podium tonight.
Yeah, what Ms. Sudorf is saying is that at least she, and maybe others as well, are feeling reluctant to engage in the back and forth question and answer.
I will ask all my questions and you can respond.
I understood the question as rhetorical.
No, not rhetorical, no.
Okay. Go ahead and ask them all.
I'm going somewhere with...
And they will be answered. What Ms. Thorne said at the
Okay.
beginning was every question that anybody has
Will be
asked will be answered by the end.
And Susan's taking copious notes.
Fine. So the first question is, did each of you know about all the facts that were presented here this evening? You mentioned that there were 3 investigations, and I am of the belief that during those 3 investigations, surely all the information was brought before you. The second question I want to ask is, in the referral of the facts of your 3 investigations to the New Jersey state, was all the information relayed to them? And is that in a document somewhere that we can have access to, so that each person here can check for themselves that, in fact, the state heard everything that was said by everybody? The third thing then is that we, the public, have to ask ourselves whether our beef is with any one member seated at this table tonight, or with the entire board, or for that matter, if we have a problem with even the state's objective investigators who heard all the facts, I'm taking it, that you presented, and came to their conclusion. Sooner or later, every public leader knows that when a decision is taken, somebody's not going to be happy. And so the question of objectivity as well as accountability is vital to all of us. For if we only go by our feelings, be they hurt or otherwise, we can find ourselves in a very difficult position. And that is why I asked those questions. The next question that I believe for the board, as well as for all of us in the public, is to ask the Hunterdon Democrat, do you believe that you fairly reported all the facts in this matter, and did you objectively investigate the whole question from everybody involved? It seems to me that there was some of that not so fair and not so balanced reporting, but then having spoken to the press myself in times past, I understand how urgent it is to get the story on paper. Last thing I want to say is this. Over the 16 years or 17 years that I have served in this community, I've been able to build up a fairly good understanding of track record. And so once again, in addition to, as well as outside of this particular matter, which troubles all of us here tonight, we have to ask ourselves as to the track record of those involved. Has the school system benefited, or has it drastically regressed? Perhaps some of you were not here 16 or 17 years ago. I was. I've seen the changes. Thank you so much.
Is there anyone else who would like to address the board?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Fran Reevy and I live in Hunterdon County. I have attended a lot of board meetings while our 6 children were growing up. I have attended a lot of graduations, and I will start with Dr. Shadow. I am appalled when you had said you had to step aside for a couple of graduates to receive their diplomas. Stepping aside is one thing, but turning your back on the graduates, their families, I'm appalled. Secondly, I have a son who, I believe the title is, he's on the bullying committee. He is the person in his middle school that if there is a problem, they come to him. Rest assured, that problem is satisfied between 24 and 48 hours. I cannot believe this has been going on roughly a year and a half, if I'm not mistaken, in a school that I have visited, have attended sporting events. To me, it reminds me of a college, a small college. This is the most gorgeous school, Voorhees High School. Our children, the school was very nice, but it did not come close to see all the banners and the awards, the trophies, etc. And my other thing is, my other statement is, administration, I have one question for you. How can you sleep with collecting the high salaries that you do? I am absolutely embarrassed and appalled. And to spend over $19,000 on legal fees, that this could have been resolved within a week. Thank you.
Brendan Noonan, I live in Lebanon Township, and I just have one question which I haven't heard answered in all the time that this has been going on. That is simply why an independent investigation was not conducted. I was not at the meeting where apparently this commitment was made, but apparently it was not followed through on, and my only question is why was this then given to the board attorney? And that's really my only question.
You know, at the time, I think my comment to the folks involved is that I know from past experiences that these kinds of issues take on lives of their own. right or wrong, when people don't like the answers they get, they go further and further and further. I did not have the benefit of what transpired at Rutgers to even think to go out for a completely independent investigation. We have worked with Ms. Liss as our attorney for about 5 or 6 years. She does tremendous work, represents the board well, makes sure that the board is moving in the right direction in terms of policies, in terms of procedures. And when I said an independent, I actually said people who are not, like I meant the administrators and teachers, they weren't going to run this investigation. I wanted someone who didn't know our kids, didn't know our parents. I wanted somebody independent. And that's when I thought of Ms. Liss, and the rest of the Board of Education went along with that. Now, if they thought that I was doing something different, or wrong, they really could have said something. I never thought at any time that I was doing anything incorrect. I wanted to get to the bottom of it. I've done this a lot of times. Called for, there was a situation back in December where a parent was writing all kinds of letters about Voorhees, and we're doing this, we're doing that. I contacted Mr. Kearns, and I asked him to look into it. Asked him to look into the allegations that this person was making, because I didn't want our people to have overlooked anything. And at first he said, a crime hasn't been committed, no one has done a complaint. I said, I would hate if someone hurt himself or herself, and it's going to come back on us. Could you please look into this? So he said, I'll turn it over to the Special Victims Unit. And I'll also call DIFUS one more time to get them involved. I thanked him profusely. And all over that winter break, I was in communication with the principal of the school to make sure that that child was taken care of, that the investigation was done. We do this all the time. We selected Ms. Liss. She did a good job.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hello, Karen Van Blarken, Highbridge. And I guess my question to the board is, when are we going to stop looking at these incidences in a silo? Because we've heard about incidences on the basketball team, on the baseball team. Dr. Shadow, you and I had a conversation, very personal conversation, about the men's soccer program. Mr. Peterson, Mr. Strom, I spoke with them as well, and I described a very unhealthy situation. If we put all the dots together, we see you have a systemic problem. And perhaps that's something that just needs to be addressed, which I don't hear being addressed at all. It's a repeated issue which keeps occurring within your athletic program at Voorhees High School. There are parents that have complained. I haven't done it at a Board of Ed meeting, so tonight I'm here, it's going on record. Last year we had that comment, it's going to keep happening. So stop putting each incident in a separate silo, and maybe we need to step back and say, should we look at everything together? And that's something I would ask of you to do.
I agree. And I do believe that both Voorhees and North are putting together a committee, parents, students, athletes, board members, to deal with these issues, these athletic issues. Because they're important to the community, they're important to us.
Hi, my name is Erin Crail. I apologize, I don't have any prepared statement. I usually come to these kinds of things with prepared statements so that I don't get nervous. I'm playing a bit of catch up on the information, and I really just came here as a concerned parent. But I wanted to just clarify one statement I believe that Ms. Thorne said in her statement, that you said Dr. Shadow could have dismissed the allegations because they happened off of school property, but you decided as a board to investigate them. Is that correct? I mean, I am only a parent, not sitting on a school board, and I know well and good that in 2011, the HIB policy blatantly states that even if the incident happens off the school grounds or online and disrupts the students' learning or the school environment, that it must be reported by law. So how can you say that he could have dismissed the allegations?
Can I try to answer that? I understood her to say that he chose not to dismiss them. He did decide to go ahead with them. It was not the board. At that point, it was Dr. Shadow's decision.
But again, it wasn't his decision, considering by law he had
Well,
to
it had
investigate.
gotten, the investigation had begun and had proceeded as far as the superintendent level. It was at that level that it was then delegated to me. So it had been initiated at the first level and gotten as far as the superintendent.
And to the Warren County Prosecutor's Office. I called 2 prosecutors early on. I called Mr. Kearns. Mr. Kearns said because it did not happen, the alleged incident in Hunterdon County happened in Warren County, so he gave me the name of John Burke. I called Mr. Burke, and I remember the conversation, and he wanted to know, why are you involved at all? I said, because of the HIV law and our responsibility, and I guess the issue of difficulty is who the person was who was alleged to have created the crime. And that's why I went to the prosecutor's office, because they're pretty much independent of local police forces. And I had a talk with him, and it was my understanding that they were going to look into it. So, but overlooking it, no.
The other part of your question, though, is what the HIV law says. You read it, I believe, correctly. If there is a determination that something that happens off school grounds has an impact on the school program or a student's learning, yes, it should be investigated. It should be treated as something which the school needs to take responsibility for. But that's the determination that's made. When something happens off school grounds at a function which is not school sponsored, the first question, or one of the first questions, is there a connection with school? If there was a determination that there was no connection with school, that there had not been any impact on any student's learning, it could have been just set aside and said, this is not something that affects learning, and not something that affects the school program.
Okay, I appreciate that information. I guess what I didn't appreciate was Ms. Thorne's making the statement as if we were doing a good thing by investigating because we could have dismissed it. That's how I took her statement, so that's just my interpretation. Secondly, I know that obviously a lot of this came to light with the reinstatement of the baseball coach. I have no connection with baseball or the coach or anything, but I guess my question is, I understand that Ms. Thorne abstained from voting whether or not to rehire him, and are your constituents allowed to know why she would abstain?
Is that a legal question that you're asking?
Well, I'm asking if she would share why she abstained from
Any board member may, but is not obligated to say why they abstain. If they choose to say so at the time of the vote, they may, they're not required to.
My last concern is kind of listening to this board and hearing them say that this has gone on too long, it's gone on too far, we should move on. You know, your constituents are all sitting here in the dark, you know, as to how you guys interpret the law and how you follow the law. And I really think it's something you just can't brush under the rug. Thank you.
questions that were not answered.
Okay.
Just this, I guess if you want to read them and answer, if you have a response.
Okay, Mr. Payton? Director Payton, do you want us to ask board members if any of the information presented tonight is new to them? Okay, so.
Well, it depends what's new. At some point in time, everything's new. So, I mean, at what point in time are we talking about? Are we talking about when the letter came out and we saw it in the Democrat? Yeah, that was new.
Good night.
Oh, I heard about it a day ago. That's why we're here. So, I knew about it a day, I knew a couple days ago.
Did each of you know about all of the facts presented here this evening?
No.
No.
In the referral of the facts to the New Jersey Department of Education, were all facts communicated and is that documented?
I mean, is that in respect to the state investigation?
Yeah.
I can explain, and Dr. Shadow, if I miss anything, you can add to that. The district's HIB coordinator took responsibility because of the initial responsibility for compiling all the information that was requested by the state. With Maren's assistance, he compiled a binder full of information. That included copies of the board policy and procedure, copies of the incident reports that were initially submitted, and documentation on how it was handled. The investigation report that was presented to the board was also presented to the State Department of Education. Like Ms. Thorne said in her statement, as far as the board was told, there were nothing left out. Everything that was requested was submitted. There are some statements in the investigation report saying that no documentation was submitted as to a couple of things. But for those things where no documentation had been submitted, that particular documentation also had not been requested. But the short answer is whatever was asked for was provided. And I believe that that would all be a matter of public record and available for anyone who wanted to see it, as long as private information is redacted. That is, any students' names that were given to the State Department of Education and the employees' names that should be redacted would have to be redacted if any member of the public wanted to take a look at it.
And the last question is really not for the board, so I'll just leave it.
Which was
Ask the Hunterdon County to that if they fairly reported.
just meant to try to answer.
Okay. Board members, is there any additional discussion you'd like to have?
Well, I think we have some to-do items based on what I heard today. I'm sure Susan captured some notes. Mine are all over the place, but I think that there's some opportunity for training. I think there's, like I said, I'm going to put this together and I'll send it to Susan, what I think the to-dos are, but there were definitely some things that I think we have some opportunities.
My question is just where do we go from here? A lot of new things came out from board members tonight, a lot of new things came out from the public, and I want to go forward in a positive note and address what needs to be addressed. And I guess the question is for you, where do we take action if action is needed as a board, whether it's addressing the letter to the editor, whether we want to retract it, whether we want to resubmit a different version, or what? I guess I'm just throwing out there for discussion. How do we handle those issues? Are we going to set a committee meeting to work on that, or we just going to walk past it? I think we need to address it in some way.
Others?
I agree. I think, there needs to be collective belief that we need to address possibly systemic issues with the athletic program at Voorhees, and I'd like the board to be involved. I know Dr. Shadow mentioned something about a committee to address these issues. That's the first time I've heard about that. So I'd like to know what our role in addressing these issues is going to be.
Ron, you want to say a few words? You're back there.
One of the ideas that I brought up about the shadows when I was the athletic director at South Hunterdon Regional High School, I had an athletic advisory council where I invited parents, coaches, players to sit down on a monthly basis and talk about the athletic programs and what we can do to enhance it, whether it comes to the fields, programs. We added 2 sports when I was at South Hunterdon. We added soccer and bowling. That was part of that committee talking about how we can do that. I will say it's not a personnel related thing. We can talk about what goes into the decisions, what we look at. We even sat down and talked about how many people have applied for the position. But we look at the programs as a whole and what we can do to enhance the culture of our athletic program. And their success.
Does that involve parents, you mean?
Yes, it does.
Now,
It is open to, again, to parents, the athletes, the coaches, teachers, board members, and we meet on a monthly basis. And I was going to make that announcement in my principal's newsletter as well as back to school.
And I hope the first thing on that agenda is that students are not bullied by the administrators when they come forward to report something.
And what about personnel? The main issue is that coaches are being hired. There's 2 at Voorhees, at least as a minimum, that I know of, that have never even played the sport for which they coach. What are the qualifications? We need a standard. These are our young men and women of the community who may wish to further their sporting career, whether they play, whether they coach, whether they want to be involved with sports medicine. We have a duty as a community to provide, as Ms. Walsh read, the very best person qualified for the job. And we have a right to see the applicants. Who were the applicants and was the very best person, in fact, picked from that application pool? That is the problem that we have. And we have no accountability either for somebody to step up and follow these professional guidelines. As the gentleman stated, there is a free course at Rutgers which you could take, so that certifies you as a coach. Why would that not be mandatory at the high school? So how do we have coaches?
Under NJSI-AA, they all must take the coaching principles course and they have all completed that. I agree with you wholeheartedly. If I could get Coach Krzyzewski here to coach the basketball team, I would. But I'm going to tell you now, when we post the positions for an opening, there are not that many people who apply. It's just not, they're just, and I would love to work more trying.
I just want to bring up an example that goes to, it's the opposite. And that was tennis. We had a great tennis coach, and one of the students wrote a letter saying that they understood that Coach Lloyd was fleshed out because he made a comment. And you know what? It was inappropriate. I think it needs to be addressed. However, this one student took it upon himself to ask all the other players if they would sign a petition to keep this tennis coach who had really 40 years of experience. And when I called the athletic director, I was told that, you know, and this young man was told, it's a done deal, don't even bother with the petition. You know, it was just the opposite of what happened here. I mean, it was like...
It was just as Mrs. Walsh said, when you have a certified teacher, instructor, who puts in for that coaching.
These coaches were asked to come forward after this. You know, I understand what the rules are. These coaches were asked to come forward after that. And again, they're not, they didn't, this student came forward and he wasn't even, you know, we try to teach our kids to like delve more into information and stuff like this. The student comes forward and he goes, don't even bother, son, don't even bother getting a petition, it's a done deal. Like, I think the athletic director needs, you know, some training himself on how to like deal with the students, or he needs to be more engaging. You know, the student comes forward, I think you should give them, you know, they're making the effort. So,
Mr. Peterson, you made the comment that you don't get a lot of response. And I just wanted to mention, there was a new hired teacher, I believe, this current past school year. I believe you would, I don't know who was responsible for the hire, but Mr. Chase Barbieri was hired, new hire, as a health teacher and a soccer coach. Our child had the privilege of having him. He is an excellent educator, he's an excellent mentor, he's an outstanding coach. After he won Coach of the Year, he was supposed to be the model for every single coach that was to be followed by him within our district. How do we go from Chase Barbieri to back to Maxim? How does this happen? And I don't want to believe that there is a lot of response, because this is a beautiful area. People would love to coach here. Jack Cuss Baseball Academy is located here. Jack Cuss baseball players live here. I am certain Chase Barbieri went to college with somebody that he knows that played college ball, that went to school for education, that would love an opportunity to teach at your school.
You guys, can I ask the board, we didn't really...
Excuse me, I want to remind Ron that the first day that we met with you, 4 minutes into our conversation, you specifically said this didn't happen. What did you say?
I sat down with
Hey guys, members of the board, I think John asked a question that the rest of us didn't answer, and that is, does this board want to have some form of response at all to some letter to the editor or something? Or no?
Well, I think a retraction, because it went out in error, and, you know, I guess we should discuss whether we want to, I guess the tone of the letter was defending Dr. Shadow's, the article attacking Dr. Shadow, and so, you know, we need to discuss the merits of that, or you know, I mean, we normally, as a board, do that.
Why don't you send a letter to the parents? I mean, if you're going to be constantly, you know, going to the newspaper, with all due respect, you know, it becomes almost like a... Post it for the parents. Send it to the parents. I mean, they're the most important people. Now, I'm a parent of Voorhees as well. I'm an educator in another district. I like when I directly get the messages. Because, first of all, not everyone reads the Democrat. And so...
Good thought.
Just my thought. I think just address...
Do we want to, we have a board meeting on Tuesday.
Tuesday night.
Do we want to address that action item on Tuesday night? And also on Tuesday night, talk about training dates. Okay, other action items that we want to make sure we...
Also the superintendent's resignation, that's this one.
Yeah.
Please mark that down, address that.
Ms. Liss, I brought up a point of order very early in the discussion with that Ms. Stoner's making. I presume we'll have an executive session at the next regular board meeting next week. I'd like to recommend that Rice notices be issued to protect the rights and due process of the named individuals that Ms. Thorne brought up in her statement. We have a duty.
We have a duty to inform them if there's going to be a discussion in closed session that could adversely affect their employment.
In an abundance of caution, do you think that might come up?
I haven't seen the agenda. I understood the comments from the public. If you're telling me that you would like to put on the agenda...
I would like it agended, ma'am. Madam Secretary of the Board, I would like it agended.
I'm sorry, did you say you want to put that on the agenda?
Yes.
Is there a consensus of the board to do this? I agree.
I'll second.
Okay. I'm fine with it. The other things in my little notes, a review of policy number 3125. We may want to do, which I know we'll do after the election, but an ethics code review. And the survey monkey thing, or however we get our survey, I was wondering if maybe we could reach out to Central to see what they use to get their anonymous feedback. I mean, I know where I am at work, they use SurveyMonkey and they always say it's anonymous. I know that if you had someone who was smart enough that could tie it to an email, but I don't think that's the intent.
It's not the intent.
And I think Ron already addressed it, the whole systemic issues at VHS. So that was my little notes. I don't know if anyone else was keeping on a list.
Were the surveys reviewed? Because I took the survey and I wrote very clearly and candidly about our child's experience with a coach at Voorhees High School. I put everything in there of what happened, which is very alarming. Coach used profanity on the court, in the locker room, is not qualified, never played the sport, and admittedly brings that up in public to the kids that he's never played the sport to which he is coaching them. These are kids at a high school level. So did anybody, who read it? Because I have yet to hear from anybody in this district what I wrote in that report, which I would think would be alarming. I would think you would not want to hear that coaches are using profanity with the students. Thank you.
How do we get her to read out the results? Do they go to both athletic directors?
Yes, so when the report back on its athletic directors, after they have had a meeting with each one of those coaches.
Has that happened yet?
No.
So I don't know if you heard our banter. So I said, how do I get to see this? My kids have both graduated already, so I'm not attuned to the whole SurveyMonkey thing.
Sure.
And what Dr. Shadow said was that a report went to the athletic directors and they're supposed to review it with the coaches. Each individually.
With a report back to me
And
on each coach.
right, and he hasn't, the timing of it is, the reviews have not finished yet.
You have those, Ron?
Okay, and then the other inherent problem is they're going to an athletic director who these things are brought up to him, and then they are very timely and appropriately brushed under the rug. Because where is the checks and balances for him? And who do we go and talk to as parents when he does not do his job? I asked him very clearly, because during games, the playing time was staggeringly unfair between team members. So I went to him personally and I said, what is Voorhees athletic policy regarding freshman sports? And he looked at me and said that for freshman sports at Voorhees High School, that the kids basically, for the most part, because it is the freshman year, should get mostly an equal playing time. This coach had several team members. I don't know why they were team members. They were only placed in the game at the last 60 seconds of the game. And he knew that. He was at the games. He saw it with his own eyes. I reported it. And for the rest of the season, those same kids continued to be put in only at the last 60 seconds of the game. When he told me his philosophy that he is to uphold and make sure his coaches uphold, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Peterson, is that the freshman year is a learning year to which mostly the players should see equal time. Never occurred, not in the freshman basketball season. Ask any, I don't know if there are any other moms here of freshman basketball players, did not happen.
Thank you. Certainly we will be taking that into account as we look
Can I
at
have a last statement on that? Unless it's a very trained individual taking these anonymous surveys to the coach, the coach will be able to identify who the players were that the parents wrote about.
Of course.
And we have a culture of retaliation here, and I'm sorry your son's probably going to get cut for the next 3 years.
Yes.
That's the history here. So this process that you set up has to be fixed, because it cannot be what you just identified.
We check on
Anything else you want to include in our action items? Okay, I think that's the conclusion of this meeting. Thank you to everyone who came out.
We need a
Madam-
motion to adjourn.
Madam, before we motion to adjourn, may I just add, it's not a question, but for the members of the public and my fellow board members, I think you might understand because of things I've shared, but whether it was my publication of my rationale and the questions I would want to address in the tablets that I sent under my personal email, I really appreciate you all coming out tonight, and I'm sorry it took us this to get here. It's a learning experience over the last whatever amount of time, but I'd like to ask, we're starting a new school year, so every parent here, and I'm sure the district staff supports it. Kudos to Mr. Peterson. He's made that comment, but for those that have been victimized, I learned something particularly between January and February of this year with emails that were sent anonymously to me. No parent should feel that way, and if your parents do, your kids do. Every board member here, I'm sure, will act accordingly. If you feel there's no avenue, please reach out. We'll do our jobs. I'm committed to do that. And for those that have been victimized, and for the gentleman, Mr. Katrab, I hope I pronounced your name properly, I appreciate you coming forward. For those kids victimized, I'm here to reassert your dignity. You saw my frustration and passion and frustration in big time. We will make this a learning experience, and I'd ask that you continue to participate with Mr. Peterson's community athletic committee, but that's what I learned from this, and I'm still learning. And I'd like to ask for the taxpayers here, every one of us, please continue to come out and just help me to govern this board better, because we all want to, I think, strive and achieve that. I feel that way, and I'm not speaking for the board, but that's my learning experience, and for the victims again, you have the dignity. Thank you, board.
Anyone else? Second. In favor?
Aye.
Aye.